Yes, good afternoon. Welcome to your daily dose of SirToshi's news. Today's day is Wednesday, the 11th of October, 2023, the year of BSV. Buy BSV.live, the best place to buy Bitcoin SV online, the original protocol and genuine Bitcoin. Here we go, let's get into it. So I have with me here today a scientist and a retired professor, and we're just going to be talking about the law and how it or the situation that Craig is potentially going to be facing when he goes up against COPA on the 15th of January 2024. So this individual I'm speaking to is extremely well known, has a very, very friendly, pleasant voice and dulcet tones that I'm sure everybody will recognise. So no introduction is required. But if we'd like to go ahead, please take the floor and tell us your experience.
Well, lovely to be on with you, and hello to everyone. Thank you. I think what I've been watching all your videos, and I am a great admirer of your knowledge.
Thank you.
And I've been looking into the blockchain since about 2011 and been lecturing about it and including it in my lectures because when I looked into it in 2011, I realized one of the main things is that the original Bitcoin and how it was set up with the notice periods, and that it values and enshrines lawful interactions and the privacy associated with your data and financial transactions, that these are all qualities of the law. So, the way the law is just act in honor, do no harm, and that men and women in the law have an inalienable right to, I mainly focus on the right to life, travel, and speech. But the two other inalienable rights, so inalienable or inalienable means they can never be taken away, and they're with you from the moment of conception until your last breath. Nobody gives them to you. They are in you or endowed from your creator or the divine. But the last two are the inalienable right to property and privacy. So one of the things about the peer-to-peer transactions on the blockchain with what's now BSV is that they embody those rights. So you can make a financial transaction or a data transaction in the private. So privacy is one of the inalienable rights. And people would have known a generation or two ago that obviously if you have real money, that your money and the data associated with you is private. And so part of the thing with this COPA case that's coming up on the 15th of January 2024 and is that it's important that people know the difference between law versus legal in relation to that case. And you mentioned it in the video on your channel that the men and women using titles and dressed up with gowns and cloaks that we'll say barristers, are actually agents of a private business called the British Accreditation Register. And they only deal with titles, legal titles, which is the lowest title. But the difference between law and the legal system is that the legal system only deals with legal entities or businesses or corporations that are not alive. But when men and women are asserting their rights to property, as Craig Wright is asserting, is his right to his private property, his property in relation to his knowledge and intellectual property, is that he needs to be operating in the law, and that if he's working with a team of solicitors and barristers, they're actually working in the legal system, and they're not the same thing.
So is there any way that he can get around this?
Now, I know he has degrees in what he thinks is law and masters in law, but the very simple thing is, the phrase I use to encapsulate it is law versus legal, that he needs to know knowledge that the law applies to men and women who are alive, and that if he's employing people in relation to his lawful property, that Craig himself needs to know the difference between the law. The law applies to men and women. So he's looking to assert his rights in law, but he may be employing men and women in the legal system, and they will only use the legal title of the business, Mr. Craig Wright or Dr. Craig Wright. And in a way, the agents of the legal system representing themselves as solicitors and barristers are actually working for a system that is misrepresenting the law, and they will never assert the rights, the lawful rights of men and women who are alive. They will only misrepresent through the legal system the rights of the business corporation, Dr. Wright, who they see is a dead entity and a dead legal fiction, and dead legal fictions have no rights to ownership. And this is where the you will own nothing. You know, what they actually do is involved in obfuscating or hiding the rights to property of Craig through the legal misinterpretation. And, you know, everybody needs to know this. And it may be that the people that are working, if they are agents of the British Accreditation Register, they are not and cannot be, because they swear a second oath, and they're actually working as agents of a private business which is all agents or all solicitors and barristers, not particularly the people that he has employed, are actually working as agents of the legal system. They are not asserting the rights of Craig in law.
Good. So he needs to go in there as a man of the living, if you like, to prove who he is, that he is alive and that he created Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, I'm not casting any aspersions on whoever is the individual legal company and the legal people, the agents of the legal system. This applies to everybody dressed up as barristers or solicitors. So what Craig needs to understand, and is that law versus legal, that for about 2 generations in the universities and in the education system and the media, they use the word legal and illegal as if it's the same as lawful and law and lawful. And the difference is the law applies to men and women who are alive, and the legal applies to businesses or corporations that are not alive, like Craig Wright Limited or Mr. Wright or Craig Wright in all capital letters. So what Craig needs to do is to know the difference between law versus legal. Now, if I was doing it, I would if you agree to them using your legal title like Dr. Wright or Mr. Wright, when you go into rooms that we call courts, people dressed up as barristers, they say that he has consented to them representing him, his legal entity, which is a person or a citizen. Now, if you look up Black's Dictionary or Black Law's Dictionary, the definition of the words person and citizen or Mr. Smith, when you use the legal title in their world, means that you don't speak legalese. And in their world, whatever you say in those rooms will never be heard by them, because they're speaking a language called legalese. And no legal fiction, Dr. Wright cannot speak legalese. So therefore, even if he talks, he will not be heard. And only the voice of the barrister will be heard. But the barrister, if they are on the bar or the British Accreditation Register, have spoken a different oath that they will only act as agents of the British Admiralty Register, and their first obligation as their agents is to ensure that no man or woman is ever seen, and their lawful rights to property, whether it's their home or their intellectual property, will never be recognized within that system. So the buildings that we think of as lawful courts are not there. These are actually a private business where the man dressed up as a judge and the man dressed up as barristers and solicitors and the guys on the other side are all working for the same private business. And the only, man there that's asserting his lawful rights is Craig. But they have a pact and all sworn an oath to just speak legalese. And legalese is a different language. And Craig is speaking English. But when you hire someone in that system to represent you, they say that they will, even though he is speaking, they won't hear what he's saying, and the man paid as a judge will not take whatever he says into account. And therefore, he can never assert his lawful rights as a man. So he can never win.
Wow. And can you, just before this interview, we were talking about your experiences of some of your colleagues. Could you elaborate on what's happened to them?
Yeah, so I suppose, one of the issues is that if you are a medical professional in law, you have an obligation to operate as a living physician. So the words in English of someone who's qualified in medicine is a physician. And physicians and nurses have an obligation in law to protect and defend the inalienable right to life of other men and women who are alive. And the principle in law is that they must act in honor, do no harm. Or the principle in medicine is first do no harm. So what happens, though, is that the system in the legal system and the banking system has extended to the healthcare system. And if you are an agent of the British Admiralty Register, they only operate through a title again. So instead of Mr. Smith, it is a doctor, right? So a doctor is the legal title of the legal entity that is on the same bar register or British accreditation register. And you then only act as a person or citizen or legal dead entity called a doctor. Now, when they are challenged then, let's say if they want to give full and informed consent, or they are doing their lawful obligation to do no harm, or they're giving prevention like vitamin D and C, the agents of the bar that operate as the register of doctors and license them to operate on the register have come to the doctors and said, you shouldn't do this, right? And then those doctors also get barristers and solicitors to represent them on front of the General Medical Council. But again, all the people in the buildings that look like courts, the General Medical Council, the man paid as judges, the barristers and solicitors of both sides, that the physician, which they call doctor, thinks that the barristers and solicitors are working for them, but that's not the case. So everything looks like it's okay. They write all the paperwork, but it's always to Dr. Smith, right, or Dr. Murphy. But at the end, the judge, even though they have 3 or 4 days of evidence, since everybody there is speaking legalese, right, except the physician or doctor, that the man dressed up as a judge will say, which is exactly the same thing as will happen in the Craig case. At some stage, they'll say, well, thank you for all the evidence, but obviously a doctor is an agent on the British Admiralty Register for doctors and licensed as an agent of the bar. And as such, they are only represented by everybody here, and they can never be innocent. They must comply with whatever the agent says. The agents, the solicitors, barristers, judges, General Medical Council are all speaking legalese. The one who's affected, again, the physician, licensed as a doctor, can never be innocent because they're only a business with the legal title, which can never get justice, can only be a dead corporation that has no rights to property or no rights to give people, to abide by the law. They're just a corporation or a business, a person or a citizen. And then at some stage, the man dressed up as a judge will say, well, they consented to be an agent of the bar through the register. They're using the title doctor. They are licensed under the bar. They must comply with the bar rules. And if they don't comply with the bar rules, which says you cannot give full and informed consent, or you must give an injection, then they can be struck off from complying with the British Admiralty Register of doctors licensed to do whatever the bar says. But they will never be seen as lawful physicians that must operate in the law. So I've seen that happen with doctors and have supported many of them and said to them that if you're paying every month to a solicitor or barrister or into a barrister fund for your legal expenses, that they will look like they're working for you, but they're all speaking legalese. And when you speak English, they will all not hear what you say. And then at the end of the day, the man dressed up as a judge will say, well, they should have known that if they use the title doctor, that means they're agents of the British Admiralty Register. And if the bar through the GMC says you can't give informed consent or whatever, and they don't comply, then they will be struck off because it's only the legal system operating. So I've seen it many times, and people are shocked because the people dressed up as barristers and solicitors speak like they're going to defend them. But I have worked with barristers who have tried to be on our side, did not really understand the difference between law versus legal. And when they really tried to uphold the law and protect people in care homes or protect physicians and nurses, the barristers themselves get threatened and their families get threatened that they cannot go against the system because they have sworn a second agency or agreement to be agents of the British Admiralty Register legal system first before they actually uphold the law.
So do you think what do you see the same thing happening in Craig's case? So just for anybody else who is a little bit confused as to what we're talking about is Craig's legal fiction effectively being in the legal world rather than the lawful world, and the lawful world should protect the rights of men and women who are alive, and this system is effectively rigged. So really, Craig needs to come out and say, actually, I am a man, and I am the creator of Bitcoin, and I can prove this. And so it's the person dressed up as a judge who actually needs to acknowledge this, and so he needs to be outside of this legal system, which is effectively a swindle.
Yes, and I suppose the thing is that actually Craig, in a way, set up the whole original Bitcoin in the law by giving lawful notice periods of 2 months plus 4 days grace.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is that Craig or, anyone's first name is their name in law. So he can actually write to COPA and write to the men and women who will be in the court, right, dressed up as judges, and just say that I am asserting my rights in law as Craig to my lawful ownership of the intellectual property associated with the blockchain in law as Craig, and that I am going to be speaking English, and the only lawful language of a lawful process to ascertain who is the owner of the intellectual property is English. And to get the man paid as a judge to confirm before he goes in that they will see him as Craig, who is asserting his lawful property rights, and the only language of law in England is English, and that they must confirm what is the language that the case is going to happen in, and also what is the that the Oxford Dictionary is the is the interpretation of the words. So that's what Craig needs to do, like before he goes in. He can do that now. And what he's saying is that the words that are spoken are English and not a foreign language legalese, and that they will recognize him as Craig wanting to claim his lawful and inalienable property rights. And that even if he does have people on his team, that Craig is speaking English in the court, and that the man and everybody there hears his voice in law, and that the language is English.
Brilliant.
And
that is brilliant.
Yeah, that's all he needs to do. And of course, I know that this would be a fundamental case. And of course, all of us are always available. But, I know we were talking before, is that a lot of people will say where they see the fraud in maybe the mortgage system or the banking system or the regulatory system or the security system, may not be aware that there is also misrepresentation of the law in English in England and everywhere through the fraudulent legal system, where they are misrepresenting the law through legalese, an unlawful language, and criminally misrepresenting the law by using the legal title, which is the lowest, like Mr. and Doctor. So Mr., when people use, things like Dr. Wright or Mr. Wright, they think they're being respectful. No, they're actually misrepresenting the law and using legalese to try and criminally defraud people of their lawful rights to property.
Brilliant. And I see that we've been going for 21 minutes. Do you want to say anything as a conclusion? Hopefully we can come back and continue to discussing this, because this has been fascinating, but obviously 20 minutes is quite a good time for just people to sit down and have a listen while they're having a coffee.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And I think what we're doing is, in the country that I'm in, we've actually had precedent lawful cases to just ask the people who are paid as attorney generals and justices and judges to confirm that they are operating in the law and they're operating in the lawful language of the nation. And we have got, correspondence back, but the people paid as attorney general are not putting their name to the correspondence. And it turns out your name, like Craig, if you put your name to something, it means you stand over it and that you are assured that it is lawful. And when even the attorney general won't put his name to something, it actually shows that they are now afraid in a way. We are probably the first generation that can have the knowledge and also be able to challenge the misrepresentation of the law that has been going on in the legal system. So
yeah. Shall I bring that image? Shall I bring that image up now, just so that people can see?
Yeah, just to finish off. Yeah, exactly. And exactly, you can bring that up. So that's just an official headed note paper of the Office of the Attorney General, of the all caps name in Ireland. And then instead of putting his name to that correspondence, it's just AGO. And so in a way, what will be dawning on individual barristers, solicitors, people paid as police and people paid as justices, High Court justices, Supreme Court justices, is that no one is above the law. And whatever happens in Craig's case, if it turns out that they misrepresent the law by using a foreign language, using legalese, and don't make it clear to Craig that no one is above the law, and all the men and women involved in all of these processes hold the liability themselves, and including their assets, their income, their pension. And I would surmise that that's why the Attorney General is not putting his name to correspondence, because they should lawfully put their name to it. Otherwise, it's issuing a counterfeit and fraud. But they won't put their name to it if there is a chance that they are misrepresenting the law, which is a criminal malfeasance, fraud, or issuing a counterfeit, which is between 7 years in prison on conviction in a lawful trial by jury, or up to 20 years if you dress up as a judge or barrister. So this is key information for everybody. But just that I understand the blockchain, I understand SegWit, and that BSV now is the original Bitcoin, and it is absolutely fundamental for us to assert, financial transactions and to expose the fraud that's going on in the legal banking system, and that BSV is actually one of the tools that we have, as well as the knowledge of the law. And I'm working actually on lawful trial by jury, an educational event in England around Oxford and London on the 2nd of December 2023, because the knowledge of the law is powerful in every field, but it does expose the criminality in the banking system and the legal system, and it's a tool in everybody's armor to defeat the criminality that's going on now.
This is brilliant. Right, that's been a 25-minute show. This has been absolutely fantastic. Stay on the line so I can have a chat with you after we wrap up the show. But we'll leave it there. Remember, this is all about the largest court case in financial history. It is the Cabal versus COPA. The Cabal masquerading as COPA, calling themselves the Crypto Open Patent Alliance, versus Bitcoin, which is Craig Wright, the inventor and creator of Bitcoin, on the 15th of January 2024. Stay tuned and we'll bring you more. And until then, be aware, take care, stay safe out there, and we'll see you in the next one.